was in that Oldsmobile ad I told you about.
Was Porky saying that's all, folks.
And that's what his tombstone says, too. That's all, folks.
Thank you, Sean Cole.
Sean does some good voices himself. You know?
He does, but we won't share them with you. Not in the company of Mr. Mel Blanc.
Very, very big thanks to Mel Blanc's son.
And to Dr. Lewis Conway, the doctor.
And to Robert's boyfriend, Oren Vinsky. That's an inside joke.
I do like Oren.
Oh, and huge thanks to Mel Blanc himself, wherever he may be, for all those voices that populated our youth.
And that's all, folks.
This is Michael from Los Angeles. Radiolab is supported by Moo.com, offering business cards with Printfinity, the option for a different image on every card in a pack. More at Moo.com.
Join NPR and WWNO for a world premiere theatrical storytelling event. Water, about nature's most precious and destructive force. Water is directed by Tony Award winner Kenny Leon and hosted by NPR's Michelle Morris, with music from members of the Voice of the Wetlands All-Stars. Tonight at 8 at the Sanger Theater. Tickets starting at $25. Special $10 student tickets available. Tickets at WWNO.org or Ticketmaster.com.
Support for WWNO comes from the Louisiana SPCA. The Louisiana SPCA is committed to improving the quality of life of all companion animals through innovative and life-saving programs. More information at la-spca.org. Support also comes from New Orleans Botanical Garden at City Park's Thursdays at Twilight Garden concert series at the Pavilion of the Two Sisters, featuring a Halloween R&B party with Cullen Landry and the Midnight Streetcar on October 30th.
Hey, I'm Jad Abumrad.
I'm Robert Krulwich.
Today on Radio Lab.
Well, we're talking about inner voices.
And for our last story of this hour, I'm going to switch things up a little bit because this is just one of the most amazing things I've ever heard.
Really?
Yeah. It doesn't have to do with voices, really. It's more like music, inner music.
Yeah.
That's Jessica Benko. She's a reporter.
Yep.
And she's the one who initially told me the story.
So, a little while ago, I went up to visit this guy.
Hi.
Bob Mill.
Bob, it's nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Excuse my snowy feet here.
And he lives in a tiny town in Michigan with his wife, Linda.
It's nice to see you again.
And who is he?
He's an amazing piano player. The Library of Congress actually called him a national treasure.
Really?
He's had this special relationship with music ever since he was a boy.
Did you grow up with any other instruments inside the house other than the piano, or was that what you started out with?
Well, my mother made me take piano lessons. I hated it. I didn't like the sound of minor keys, and the piano teachers had me playing a recital in which there's a Schubert minor key piece in it. And so on the recital I played it in major. And everyone thought that was a travesty.
These days, though, his main music isn't so much Schubert. It's actually ragtime.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The rhythms.
So the thing about ragtime is that oftentimes the player is actually playing two different rhythms at the same time, one with the left hand, one with the right hand.
And then he puts the rhythms of 3 in the right hand.
The thing about Bob is he could do this like times 1,000.
What does that even mean?
Well, let me back up. I first heard about Bob from a neurologist named Kirsten Betterman, who's now at Penn State
University. First time I heard about Bob Mill was through friends.
Kirsten heard about Bob from a colleague who'd seen him play for an audience.
Well, I might just take a tune like a...
He was actually playing multiple rhythms with his two different hands and switching back and forth between different pieces of music and carrying on a conversation at the same time.
Well, that's say it's not too...
You can look up videos of Bob on YouTube, and you can see him performing and throwing out jokes, but at times you'll see him carry on a full conversation while playing. From the perspective of a neurologist, this is actually really hard, because the part of your brain that should be engaged in playing a piece of music that complicated should also be engaged in having a conversation.
The talking part and the playing part are the same part?
They're the same part in most of us.
For most people, that sort of thing, playing a complex piece of music and having a conversation would interfere with one another.
Yes, that's what you usually would think. Unless you're highly skilled and you play maybe one piece of music at a time that you've done multiple times, but even then it would be very difficult to this degree.
So Kirsten got in touch with Bob, and she started asking him some questions.
About the way he would perceive music.
And in the course of chatting with him and talking about how he perceives music and all of this, he happened to say to her
that I could hear an entire symphony in my head, and I didn't think that was too big a deal because I always listened to two of them at once.
He told her,
I only have to focus on the one melody that I want to hear at a given time, and then that's the piece I play, but I hear them all ongoing.
Did he just say he can hear two
different symphonies
in his head
at the same time?
And we thought this was very unusual.
Yeah, but I mean, are we talking the full symphonies or just the melodies?
Every instrument.
Every instrument.
And he can focus in and
turn one of them up, one of them down, and they both run simultaneously. So then she pushed to the envelope and asked me if can I hear three
pieces of music.
I said, well, I don't know, never tried.
But he was like, yeah, I think I could do 3.
When we challenged him a little bit, actually he said I can do 4 if you ask me.
What?
But I wouldn't go any further than that.
No, that's total. Just 4 symphonies at the same time? That's just nothing but noise.
Absolute cacophony.
You know, the 4 pieces of music that just was, wow, I said, nobody can do this, you know, so I was really critical.
Yeah, because it's not true.
We had to think about how to test this.
Let me tell you about how the experiment worked, and then tell me if you think it's true.
All right.
We came up with the behavioral test.
So the first thing Kirsten had to do was find a control, someone to compare Bob to.
Right.
So she found a conductor.
Peter Perret, who's the former conductor of the Winston-Salem Symphony.
Who is himself an accomplished musician. Before the test, she sent him and Bob
4 pieces of music. We had Schubert's Symphony. We had Brahms. We had Beethoven.
And finally, one from Mendelssohn. So you have to keep in mind, these 4 symphonies are in different keys and different tempos.
Very different in their themes and the instrumentations. And the challenge for them was to learn these 4 pieces of music.
Completely memorize them.
4 different tunes, and they only gave me a couple days to listen to them.
And then play them in their mind, and we would then ask them where in a certain piece they would be after an arbitrary time.
I'm not really following.
Okay, so here's what they did. They put these guys in the scanner, and they said to them, I want you to play the music in your mind.
Play the music in your mind.
Close your eyes and imagine the music.
So no music is playing out loud?
No music playing, just inside their head.
And are they imagining it however they want, or
No.
on the CD?
Exactly what they had heard on the CD.
So same instruments coming in and out?
Yep.
Same tempo?
Yep.
So if it was vivace on the CD, vivace in their head?
Exactly.
And why were they doing this again?
Well, they wanted to see if these guys could track via memory these really complicated pieces of music.
I see.
So they put the guys in the scanner, they're laying there. And on a screen in front of them, the word start flashes. And at that moment, they start playing the first piece of music back in their head. In the control room, they're tracking the music themselves to follow the timing.
The researchers?
Yeah.
Oh, so while Bob and the student are imagining it, they're actually keeping track of where the real CD is?
Exactly. They let it go for a while. And at an arbitrary moment, they say stop. And then they say, sing to me exactly where you are in the music.
Like the note?
The exact phrase. They go back, they compare the timing.
To the CD.
Right, to find out if these guys can really recreate inside their heads exactly what they'd heard.
And?
So our conductor, our control was really right on target with the right answer and timing within a second.
Well, so this conductor's imagined symphony was only a second off from the real one?
Yep. Same with Bob. So Bob's within a note or two.
Not bad.
Now, round two.
The multi-song test, as we call it.
They told them both to start that first piece of music again. And then a little bit later, they said, start the second piece of music. In your head.
Simultaneously?
Yep.
Alright, I'm already like, come on. This is crazy. Like, we slipped into fantasy.
Well, and that's what happened for the conductor. He couldn't do it.
He couldn't do two simultaneously.
Yeah, of course he couldn't do it. It's impossible.
There was no chance. He said this is an overwhelming, impossible task.
His brain just shut down.
Well, he died or something?
He stopped even being able to track the first piece of music. He just got confused. Now we go to Bob.
They put me into the MRI and they asked me to start tune 1 in your head. So I did. Then, roughly 10-15 seconds later, I got a message on the screen that says, continue listening to 1, start 2. And then 15 seconds later, continue listening to tunes 1 and 2, start 3. And then the same thing with tune 4.
Right now is yelling like a 3-year-old.
It really is mind-boggling to think about. It makes my brain hurt.
But we proved he can do it.
When Kirsten gave you the different pieces of music to listen to, did any of them clash?
No, they don't clash. They're all just playing different pieces. There's nothing chaotic about it.
All right. So assuming this is true, how does he do this? How does he explain to himself how he does this?
So I think there's two things going on here. The first has to do with emotion.
Bob is using different brain areas, I think. In his case, probably more emotional brain cells.
Emotion deepens the way that we experience things, makes stronger memories, and Bob has a really strong emotional relationship with music.
Well, don't we all?
Yeah, but it's a little bit beyond the whole minor keys make me feel sad. He has really specific emotions associated with individual keys on the scale.
When I hear C major, it's a very bland key. It's like, I don't know how to describe. It's like eating water soup or something like that. But D major, the bright key that makes me want to dance even though I can't dance. And every key, every one of the keys of the piano had a different emotional attachment to me.
So for Bob, if just the keys are triggering different emotions, imagine what it must be like when you get to actual music.
So you think that something about how he experiences the emotions of the music makes it etch more deeply in his brain or something?
Yeah, I think when he's got these 4 pieces of music going, he's not thinking hard about tracking each one of them. He's already in them. He feels them inside his body, and you can feel more than one feeling at a time. So that's one idea. The second idea do actually more with image and space, really. I asked him if he could try playing back 2 pieces of music right now. And I asked him, when you hear these 2 symphonies in your head, what are you seeing?
I can picture 2 symphony orchestras sitting side by side.
He actually sees the literal orchestras in his head?
Yeah, and I see them as silhouettes. There's no conductor in front of either one. There's a brownish hue out in front of them, like it's the floor, but it's more the color of the deep brown of a violin. And in back of them, there's a semicircle that's bluish in color. Then when I listen to them, I'm going to listen to Brahms' Second Symphony over on the left side. And over on the right side, I'll turn on the Emperor Concerto, 3rd movement of Beethoven. So I'm listening to that. Now, these aren't 2 different keys. Emperor's in E flat, Brahms is in D. So now, if I want to pay particular attention, let's say I want to listen to the Emperor here. I'm going to go into the E major. I just sped it up. See, I can speed the thing up to go to some other part in it. I can jump backwards. Let's see, just a minute. I can hear it in F. I can put it in any key I want to. But I'm going to roar forward in this 3rd movement of the Emperor here. And I'm listening to the E major variation on the piano, which is just like it's just rocking on this beautiful E major chord, pivoting around to the E flat note and going up and down from there on the piano.
Wow. So his crazy talents may have something to do with this movie-making thing that he does in his head.
Yeah, but it's not just a movie. It's like a 3D movie. He can use it to find out where a specific instrument is.
How do you mean?
In his mind's eye, he can fly out over these orchestras and actually look down on the individual instrument he wants to see.
When I'm looking down and I see the piano out in front of them,
he can zoom in and see them playing their instrument.
Okay, now I'm up there in the air listening to this thing, and over on my left side I can still hear this Brahms going along. The Brahms, I can only see the silhouettes from the front, whereas the Emperor over here, I can see full color in every person's face in it, plus hear the lines that they're playing.
And as he's flying out over these orchestras, the instruments actually get louder and softer depending on where he is. Like if he goes behind orchestra number 1,
where I can hear the bass much louder. Let's see. Then if I go over to the left side, I'm hearing the violins.
And he says he can float right above the players and actually see what they're doing.
I can see every wrinkle in the pleated shirts of their tuxedos. And I can see the deep brownish-orangish color of the violas. And I can hear the deep sound, beautiful sound of that low viola. And I can hear every little red rosin scratch across their bows.
God, listening to music for this guy must be like an acid trip. The way that he's describing it?
I think it is. And when he listens to recorded music, it's so much diminished from what he feels when he's imagining it.
Huh. So he doesn't listen to CDs?
He cannot stand listening to CDs.
Ah, wow.
Yeah. He's a real example of the extremes of the human mind.
So what does he do with these crazy talents? I mean, is he like a billionaire?
Nope. First of all, ragtime's not exactly the most popular form of music in the United States at this point, but it's what he likes to play. And he plays, 250 shows a year. But a lot of them are at historical societies or churches.
Well, Linda and I, we've got a small motorhome. It's an airport bus, one of those little 15-passenger buses. It's got a hot shower and a bathroom and a bed, of course.
So, he travels around in his little motorhome with his wife when he can and without her when he can't, and sleeps in Walmart parking lots. He's working on an opera, which is mostly done, and he writes it in his head while he's driving, and then he sits down in a McDonald's and writes it out on paper, and, that's pretty much what he does with his life.
Thanks to reporter Jess Benko for that great great story, and also to producer Mark Phillips for making it sound so good. I'm Jad Abumrad.
I'm Robert Krulwich.
Thanks for listening.
Good morning, this is Albert in State College, Pennsylvania. Support for NPR comes from NPR stations and Wix.com, giving business owners the ability to create their own website with the drag and drop builder. Learn more at Wix.com. Esurance, insurance for the modern world, with online tools that provide customers with 24/7 advice and support. Learn more at Esurance.com. And Scion, a car company that supports and collaborates with people who are driven to follow their passions. Scion, for the driven. That's it. Thank you.
Support for WWNO comes from Bring Your Own, a live storytelling series that takes place in unconventional venues across New Orleans. Each month, storytellers have 7 minutes to respond to a theme. Stories are told live, unscripted, and true to the teller. More at bringyourownstories.com. Support also comes from Southern Rep Theater, presenting John Bigonet's Broomstick, starring Leanne Pattison, with performances through November 2nd at Ashe Cultural Arts Center. SouthernRep.com for tickets and more on the 2014-15 season. Broadcasting in HD from the University of New Orleans, this is 89.9 WWNO New Orleans, 90.5 KTLN Thibodeau Homa, and online at WWNO.org. New Orleans Public Radio, serving Southeast Louisiana. Good afternoon to you. I'm Cynthia Scott. I hope you're enjoying this fine weekend. It's 3 o'clock.
36% thought it was very easy, while 31% thought somewhat easy, when the correct answer really is not very easy at all.
News consumers were asked how easy it is to contract Ebola. Turns out the more news they watch, the wronger they were. From WNYC in New York, this is On the Media. I'm Bob Garfield. In the upcoming midterms, super PACs are banking on their political ads influencing far more than mere voters.
The more TV ads aired during state Supreme Court judicial elections, the less likely justices are, on average, to vote in favor of criminal defendants.
That and advice for adolescent boys from a video game columnist.
A 15-year-old who would write and say, I think I got my girlfriend pregnant and I don't know what to do. And then I would take that opportunity to say, okay, so you're 15. You think your girlfriend's pregnant. Here's the thing about sex.
There's more coming up after this.
From NPR News in Washington, I'm Barbara Klein. A nurse who's being held in quarantine in New Jersey is decrying her isolation and the way she was treated when she arrived at Newark Airport yesterday from Sierra Leone, where she was treating Ebola-infected patients with Doctors Without Borders. In an editorial for the Dallas Morning News, Casey Hickok says the U.S. must treat returning healthcare workers with dignity and humanity. Preliminary results show Hickox doesn't have Ebola, but she's being kept in quarantine under new mandatory rules. Along with New Jersey, New York, and Illinois are imposing mandatory 21-day quarantines for anyone returning from West Africa who's had contact with Ebola patients. But Erica Lance of member station WBUR in Boston reports Governor Deval Patrick says Massachusetts will not follow suit.
Governor Patrick says he will not follow the lead of his counterparts in New York, New Jersey, and Illinois, who are imposing a 3-week quarantine on travelers who've had contact with Ebola-infected patients. Patrick says that's not necessary for Massachusetts.
I think it's probably a step further than we need here in the Commonwealth. We're prepared, and it's certainly a step further than what the CDC has recommended. But I understand that folks are anxious.
Governor Patrick says the risk for Ebola is very low in Massachusetts. He also says that doctors, nurses, and public safety officials are prepared to deal with a case if one arises. For NPR News, I'm Erica Lance in Boston.
In Washington State, 3 teenagers remain hospitalized in critical condition. One is serious after being shot yesterday in the cafeteria of Marysville Pilchuck High School. Among them, 2 14-year-old girls shot in the head. Dr. Joanne Roberts of Providence Everett Medical Center says they're under constant care.
The next 3 days are going to be crucial.
One person was killed. The gunman is also dead of a self-inflicted gunshot. Authorities say they've completed their investigation at the school. Egypt's president says a deadly attack on the Egyptian army yesterday was conducted with outside support. NPR's Leila Fadel reports Abdel Fattah el-Sisi made the comments today in a national address.
At least 30 people were killed in a complex attack on an army checkpoint in the northern part of the Sinai Peninsula on Friday, the single deadliest attack on security forces in decades. There's a big conspiracy against us, President Sisi says in a televised statement flanked by army commanders to break the army, the backbone of Egypt. He didn't elaborate, but did vow to uproot militants in Sinai where an insurgency is growing. He called it a war. Last night, Egypt declared a state of emergency and a temporary curfew in the northern part of the peninsula.
This is NPR News. The federal government will recognize same-sex marriages in 6 more states. Attorney General Eric Holder today added Alaska, Arizona, Idaho, North Carolina, West Virginia, and Wyoming to the list, bringing the total to 32 states, plus the District of Columbia. All married couples in those states will now qualify for federal benefits. Envelopes containing a suspicious yellow powder arrived at 5 Western consulates in Istanbul Friday. NPR's Peter Kenyon reports the U.S. consulate was among those receiving the packages.
The suspicious envelopes were sent to the U.S., Belgian, French, Canadian, and German consulates. And Turkish authorities say more than a dozen people were hospitalized as a precaution after possible exposure to the substance, most of them from the Canadian consulate. Officials say tests on the powder probably won't be completed before Monday, and consulate spokespeople say so far all personnel are safe and well. Turkish teams were working to decontaminate the consulates. A State Department spokeswoman says the package received at the U.S. consulate was handled according to security protocols and the consulate remained open. Peter Kenyon, NPR News, Istanbul.
A musician who helped create a signature sound of the 60s has died.
I'm with you, my love.
Bassist, singer, and songwriter Jack Bruce, a founding member of Cream. The musician was trained as a classical cellist, but he wrote and sang songs for Cream that were covered by other celebrated artists, including Jimi Hendrix, David Bowie, and Ella Fitzgerald. Bruce was 71. I'm Barbara Klein, NPR News in Washington.
Support for NPR comes from Esurance, insurance for the modern world, offering a mobile app that lets users report and monitor car insurance claims at esurance.com.
Support for WWNO comes from the Department of Music at the University of New Orleans, presenting Jazz at the Sandbar, featuring pianist Jorge Pacheco on October 29th at 7 p.m. on the UNO Lakefront campus. Maps and information on tickets and performers at nojc.org/sandbar or music.uno.edu.
In New York, this is On the Media. Roca Gladstone is out this week. I'm Bob Garfield. Over the past 7 days, the Ebola epidemic has continued to rage in West Africa, where nearly 10,000 have been infected. So naturally, in the United States, wall-to-wall coverage fixated on the United States. No wonder, including patient number 1, the late Thomas Eric Duncan, who arrived from Liberia infected, 2 nurses whom he infected, and the New York doctor just returned ill from Guinea. The total of cases diagnosed in this country has skyrocketed to 4.
And tonight, Ebola has come roaring back into the news. All it took was a suspected case in the nation's largest population center, New York City.
Without a travel ban, travelers with undiagnosed cases of Ebola can appear in our emergency rooms.
The World Health Organization says it missed the writing on the wall with Ebola, but now that the virus is hopping across the globe, is it too late to stop it?
My brother is a critical care doctor. He would tell you right off the bat, this thing is easier to get than you believe.
No,
it isn't, which may explain why the cases of Ebola transmission in this country are confined to healthcare workers who were in direct physical contact with a dying patient exhibiting full-blown symptoms, as opposed to, say, anyone who may have encountered the infected travelers on a plane or subway before they were symptomatic, or anyone else in Dallas or New York, or you. The threat to the U.S. public is infinitesimal, but the hysteria is full-blown.
Even a school teacher's trip to Dallas was enough to cause a panic in Maine.
Last night, workers disinfected a Cleveland school because a teacher may have had contact with an Ebola patient.
Syracuse University canceled an appearance by Pulitzer Prize-winning photojournalist Michael Ducille because he was in Liberia 3 weeks ago.
Watching this unfold, you can draw two different conclusions about the news media as an institution. One possibility is that we've simply not figured out how to balance the public's right to know against the danger of shouting fire in a crowded theater. The other is that we're too financially dependent on the audiences we generate to slow down when reporting mutates into fear-mongering. Either way, the national hyperventilation became so severe in the last 2 weeks that Fox News Channel's Shepard Smith tried to call a timeout.
These are the facts. We do not have an outbreak of Ebola in the United States, nowhere. Suggestions have been made publicly that leaders and medical professionals may be lying to us. Those suggestions are completely without basis in fact.
Smith went on to dispense the smartest public health advice of the week: get a flu shot. Bless his heart. Although, of course, the rest of Fox News was pretty much hysteria ground zero.
Meanwhile, we have a border that is so porous, Ebola or ISIS or Ebola on the backs of ISIS could come through our border.
In fact, throughout the U.S. media last week, unlike the physical nation, Ebola was rigged. The story dominated every front page, and according to the Tyndall report, the past 3 weeks consumed 28% of the big three networks' combined news holes. 239 minutes of coverage on ABC, CBS, and NBC. And of those 239 minutes, exactly 28 were devoted to West Africa, where the epidemic actually resides. And so, for the listener seeking a template for simple perspective, On the Media presents the Breaking News Consumer Handbook.